we're about to welcome onto the stage Fleur Pellerin, who is the speaker for this next session. Good morning. Nice to see you. I think we're going to sit down. I've found some fresh water. This has not been used by anybody else. It's a real pleasure to welcome Fleur Pellerin to host this session. Fleur is, I think it's safe to say, one of the rising stars of President François Hollande's government. She is Minister for Small and Medium-Sized Companies, Innovation, and the Digital Economy. And let me tell you, as a journalist, when I'm writing about her, that's a terrible title. It's way too long. I'm always looking for ways to shorten it. But the point is, I think it's a very complex portfolio that deals with some of the most vital economic issues of the day. You could say that she is Minister for the future of the French economy. And that's a daunting challenge. Fleur Pellerin has had a brilliant academic career, culminating at Sciences Po in Paris and then at ENA, the graduate school that still trains France's top leaders and administrators. She spent time at the Cour des Comptes, which is the French national auditor, and indeed, I think you were on attachment at the United Nations for some time in the mid-noughties, as we say. And she has been very involved in promoting social diversity in France as a member of the 21st Century Club. She was in charge of digital economy issues during President Hollande's presidential campaign, which is when I first met you, I think about a week before the election, and you weren't taking anything for granted. All your fingers were crossed because you'd felt defeat before, and you were very anxious that success would follow this time, and indeed it did. A colleague, and as I've described, you then became minister. A colleague was quoted, one of your colleagues was quoted anonymously in a profile I read, saying, "Fleur Pellerin drives her team like the boss of a startup. She delegates, but she keeps an eye on everything." Fleur, the theme for this session is competitiveness for France and for Europe. Let me start with France. France has seen its competitiveness in international markets. It's not alone in this in Europe, but it has seen a considerable deterioration over the last decade. What went wrong, and what is your government doing to make things better? Shall we? Okay. Let's feel comfortable.
Well, that's a very difficult question, of course, and there's not a single answer. I guess what went wrong, I think maybe we made some bad choices. And when I say we made some bad choices, I'm not meaning only the government, of course, but maybe also some companies who decided not to specialize in the right markets or in the right products. So I think it's a collective responsibility, but the result today is that, of course, the situation of competitiveness in France today is a bit difficult. We see it in our ability to attract talents, in attracting companies, in attracting investors, and we see that the situation is not so good, and that we need to react very quickly if we want to change the situation. So today what we can say is that we have, of course, assets and good points, infrastructures, good students, good higher education system, good research and development. So the basics, the fundamentals are here, but it's our way to turn these fundamentals into the right products that will meet markets, which is not appropriate today. That's what we need to change. So I'm particularly aware of my responsibility as a Minister for Innovation, because I feel that today where we are laying a bit backwards, it's in innovation, so in our ability to put innovation a bit everywhere in society, but also in the economy. And so what we're trying to do, what this government has been trying to do for the last 18 months now, is to try to diffuse and to give more popularity to a sort of spirit of innovation, which we lack, I think, from school to economic sectors. So in very operational terms, we've been working on cost competitiveness of our economy by creating this tax credit for growth and employment, of course. So that makes 20 billion euros effort of public money for helping companies to increase their cost competitiveness. But also at the same time, I'm on my part working a lot on everything that drives innovation into the economy. So how can we change the culture, drive children, students to take risks, and entrepreneurs to take risk, create that entrepreneurial drive and spirit in the whole society. So that's mainly on the cultural side. And on very practical aspects, we've been trying to create new incentives, public incentives to increase innovation, such as an innovation tax credit, for instance, to complete the R&D tax credit, and also various measures in order to boost innovation. That is to say, not only research, fundamental research, but the way we can turn research into the right products. So design, marketing, that's where we should focus, I think.
Certainly viewed from outside, and I think many members of the audience here today are from outside France, there's a reputation here for high taxes, for a lot of change in the tax regime on a kind of ongoing basis, which makes investors wary. Tell us a little bit about what is happening on this front now. Is France an unfriendly place for business because of the tax regime?
I hope not, but I'm fully aware that today in an open economy, of course, attractiveness lies a lot on also on the tax regimes and the administrative regimes that surround the activity of entrepreneurs. So, of course, we are in a worldwide competition, and tax systems are also in a worldwide competition. And I think what is very important today is that we manage to stabilize it's not really the level or the rates that are important, even though they are important, but the main thing is to create some visibility and stability so that entrepreneurs can have strong business models that do not change every year. So I think that's the main point. But of course, when I say that, we need to take into account the environment, and especially the fact that we need to be very responsible in managing our public finance. And what we have in France is a very difficult situation in terms of public deficits and public debts, and we need to deal with that situation. It's a commitment that we've made. It's a European commitment. So the big picture is that we need to have very responsible management of our public finance because it's an element of our economic sovereignty. So that implies, of course, sacrifices or efforts. And these efforts, we are making them right now. And I know it's difficult. It's difficult for people. It's difficult for companies. It's difficult for the states. As the head of a ministry, I can tell you that I'm making efforts also on the public expense. So I know that we need to make these efforts and to explain this effort to the French citizens. But the goal, really the objective, is to make the environment as stable and to create confidence, because everybody knows today that what is important if you want entrepreneurs to invest, to take risks, to employ people, it's the confidence in the future and in the stability of the environment. So I'm fully aware, and I just wrote an article yesterday or today in Les Echos saying that really what we need to focus on is the stability and foreseeability of the environment for entrepreneurs.
This is a socialist government with the great concern, obviously, to preserve France's social welfare system, to preserve the commitment to equality. And at the same time, you're also a government that is trying to enhance conditions for entrepreneurs, for business, to enable companies to be more profitable, to invest and create jobs. Is there a conflict there? Is there explain a little bit about how the French socialist government is going about reconciling those aims?
No, it's true that it's difficult. There can be a conflict because the growth rate is very low. If we had a growth rate of, let's say, 2-3%, it would be easy to, at the same time, promote a better welfare system or give more money to people who need some money at a time where this economic situation of people can be difficult for the poor people of the population, and at the same time create a right environment for businesses actually. So it would be easy if we had more growth to distribute the wealth in the country. But it's true that, as I said before, we need to make an effort. So it's quite difficult to say we adjust public finance. We have a responsible way to manage public finance. At the same time, we don't want to jeopardize our growth perspective. So we need also to help companies because, well, jobs and purchasing power will not be created by the state. Or we can sometimes create some jobs, public jobs, but it's not. We know that it's not the key for growth, for future growth, and for creating the right conditions for investment and growth in the future, sustainable growth. So we know that if we want to solve our unemployment problem, which is quite critical in France. And if we want to put France back, the French economy back on the right tracks of a sustainable and high value-added growth, we need to help companies. We need to help companies, and we're not helping companies because we like bosses, and it's not the. We have a common fight that we're pursuing, and this fight is for growth and jobs. So we know that growth and jobs will come only from companies, actually from businesses, and so that's why I totally assume the fact that we must create a business-friendly environment for businesses to create jobs. So that's, and I think even someone who is socialist can have this kind of words. It's not something that is not conciliable or not consistent with a with socialist values, actually.
We were discussing in the last panel things that have been happening in Europe in terms of reforms, the austerity and so on in different countries. Your government is criticized sometimes for being too timid about making structural reforms in the French economy. What's your answer to that? Well,
we are making some structural reforms. What we've done in the labor market, for instance, with the agreement that we signed a bit earlier this year, and which goes towards a greater flexibility of the labor market, is a big progress, even for, I mean, all the more for a socialist government. So it's structural reform. The tax credit I was mentioning for unemployment and for employment and growth is also a way to make structural reform in terms of cost competitiveness of the economy. So these are moves towards structural reform. But you're right, it's quite difficult in France to reform. For instance, I'm thinking of taxes. If you've seen recently, when you have situation. It's difficult to make things change or to move things. So maybe in some areas we should be more proactive and more have more maybe will to change things a bit. I mean, even if resistance is strong, but so on this part I agree, but it's not true to say that we don't do anything on the structural part, because we are moving slowly in this direction.
I mean, France has a reputation for strong reaction to change, that in the past reform efforts in areas like pensions and so on have provoked very strong public protests. Is it the policy of this government to advance, as it were, step by step in a way that avoids provoking a large public reaction? Or should this government actually be more proactive in taking on vested interests in order to make change that really provokes, that achieves a transformation?
Well, in theory, I would say probably we should be a bit more proactive, but at the same time, it's not the method that we've chosen, and it's not the way France is, it's not the way you drive the population towards a better acceptance of reforms, I think, in France. So you have to take into account the social pact or the way the French society reacts to reform, because it's not, I think it's not very useful to try to do it violently or by force, or to try to enforce against the will of the people. So the method that we've chosen is to discuss, and even on my part, is more on the economic side or business side. I've organized a sort of big consultation about the environment of businesses in France, which is last for about 3 or 4 months. And everybody was around the table, people from companies, people from businesses, people from trade unions, people from the administration. And it's a discussion that brought on the table the right answers that everybody thought were good. So we have this method where we try to put everybody on the table and try to discuss, because we think it's a better way to make things accepted, rather than try to enforce them.
I remember this very well, because it was partly in response to the Les Pigeons. There was a big protest movement against some increases in capital gains taxes, which would affect investors in businesses. Which blew up, many of you may have followed the case, into a very celebrated online protest last year, and there was a strong response. Shortly after the response, where you changed the tax regime and you had a lot of buy-in from entrepreneurs, there was then the case where Yahoo was effectively blocked from taking over Dailymotion, a very successful French online video service. There sometimes seem to be conflicting signals.
Well, it's I see why it can be interpreted as conflicting signals, but at the same time, you know, you're coming back to the Dailymotion and Yahoo affair. I think it's not an anti-business signal. It's just that. And maybe we'll talk about that a bit later. It's just the fact that in the digital economy, we are today observing that France and Europe has been unable to create big champions in the Internet 2.0, in the Web 2.0 sector. And that's a bit a pity. And the fact that promising companies such as Dailymotion have only one horizon, and this horizon is to be bought by an American or a Japanese company, or to be listed on the NASDAQ, or to be bought by a venture, to be to get equity with an American venture capital fund. I think it's a bit a pity. It's not a problem if it happens sometimes. It's the life of businesses, but it's a pity if it's the sole horizon of these promising companies. And I think that was just the point that we wanted to make with Dailymotion. We want to create in France and in Europe the right environment for these companies to develop and to internationalize their businesses. So, and it's not inconsistent with the pro-business method that was implemented through the Assise de l'entrepreneuriat, this consultation that we launched on business environment. So I think it's quite the same spirit, actually.
Okay, well, I mean, we're talking about competitiveness on the European level as well, and I know you have some strong thoughts about that. What has Europe been doing wrong, particularly, for example, in the sort of digital area and in terms of regulation, that has perhaps prevented the emergence of big European champions in the Internet 2.0?
I don't know what we've been doing wrong. I don't want to lecture the Commission or the member states, but it's true that if you look at the situation today in the telecom sector or in the digital economy more broadly, we don't have any big operator, we don't have any big company, we don't have any Google or Yahoo. We have some success stories, we have some of them, but not that many. And it's true that today, if you look at, for instance, the market value of Orange, Deutsche Telekom, Telefonica, it's not, if you sum them up, it's not the market value of Verizon or AT&T. So we are quite second league now in terms of telecom sector and digital economy. And I'm not mentioning the fact that we don't manufacture any devices anymore, while in maybe 10 years ago, we had 55% of the market with Siemens, Alcatel, Nokia, Ericsson, Sagem. We had 6 big manufacturers, and they were amounting to 55% of the market. And today, with Microsoft buying Nokia, it's 0 in Europe. So it's really a pity. And I think Europe has focused on antitrust policy, increasing competition, thinking of lowering prices for the consumer, which is great for the consumer, of course. But today, the result is that the economic actors are a bit fragile, a bit weak. And so I think that today, and that's why I'm trying to do by increasing cooperation with other member states, we are trying to create the right environment for digital economy to boost in Europe and not to miss the revolution of Web 3.0, which is the Internet of Things, which is big data. And I think we can create the right conditions. If we cooperate more on a pan-European level, we can create the right conditions to have tomorrow the Googles, the Facebooks of tomorrow. But we need to be very proactive. It's not really, a very. I think we do not need to be very dirigist or to have a strong planification. But we can work together with other member states on the conditions whereby we're going to create new champions for tomorrow. So that's my goal.
Right. We're going to. This is really new tech.
Yeah. I'm amazed. I'm very impressed.
No, we'll open up. We'll open up to some questions from the audience, if you will. Can I just quickly ask one question though? In the last panel, we were discussing a lot about the need for Europe to kind of inspire, find the ability to inspire Europeans again. If we are moving away from a regulatory system which has favoured helping the consumer, which has been concentrating on that aspect, to one that more favours the producer, is there a danger that we actually lose an opportunity there to inspire citizens?
Well, that can be a danger, but I think it's a very to always favour policies that are consumer-driven. Even though, as a consumer, I'm totally sensible to what it can bring to the populations, of course. But I think it's very short-term, and I think it's also a possibility that, especially young people, can also be more proud to be European because they have prospects of becoming a number one place in terms of the economy of knowledge, if they have the prospect of being able to create startups that will become champions of tomorrow. I think it's a nice way also to project, to rewrite the European project, which is a bit empty right now. And I think we should focus on what the youth expects today. Do they expect to pay €1 less on their mobile phone subscription, or do they want jobs, or do they want to be able to project themselves in successful companies that they would have created themselves? I think we can also, the public bodies and governments can also create new perspectives for the youth. And I think it's more important to tell them you will be able to take your destiny into your hands and create jobs and transform your ideas into businesses, rather than say only, well, you won't pay any roaming fees when you travel from France to Berlin, for instance. Right. So I think it's a better way to project themselves.
Who would like to ask a question? I've got a slight problem because of the lights. There's a person in the middle here. Why don't you grab the microphone?
Good morning, Françoise Lamotte. I have a question regarding the French regulation, which is quite restrictive in terms of sharing data. For example, in the United States, they use the social security number as a single identifier for everyone. In the UK, they use credit scoring. And I think that the restrictive French regulation now is putting us behind when we want to use big data and the new technologies. So are there any perspectives to change the regulation?
Well, you're right. I'm totally aware of the potential of growth, activity, and also better public services if we open data a bit more. But of course, there's a different approach in terms of privacy and data protection in countries you were mentioning, which have a more liberal approach, such as the States, maybe UK, Scandinavian countries, and more Latin countries, who have a more regulatory approach of data protection and privacy. So I think we need to find the right balance right now between high standards of data protection and also exploiting the potential of the use of data. And I totally agree, because I'm promoting a real industrial vision of the big data sector for the coming years, because I'm sure it's very pervasive and it's very important for us to be at the forefront in terms of big data. So I'm working right now. There's the European regulation that is being right now negotiated for data protection and privacy, and at the same time I'm really trying to promote the idea of a law that in France would also create the right environment for confidence in the digital economy and work on data protection issues. So we're trying now to, and I had a debate at the Senate yesterday on this topic, we're trying to open up the regulation so that we can give new opportunities for businesses who want to work on the data, but at the same time guarantee a high level of the data protection. You can see also that the population is very worried about the way their data is processed and analyzed. So we need to find the right balance between the two aspects.
More questions? Trying to make sure I see everybody. One right up here on my right-hand side.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Moreno. Ms. Pellerin, we have heard these past days that companies where we had more women on board are more efficient than others. I'd like to know, since our government is completely in parity, what's your thought about that?
If the government is more efficient because... is that the question? If the well, probably. I mean, probably academic studies are not so numerous in terms of the efficiency and of public organizations when parity is respected. But I don't see where there would be a difference between private and public sectors. So I would say, of course, and this is not a biased opinion at all, I would say that probably the fact that you have a diversity of profiles, of origins, of curricula, is probably something that gives more efficiency to collective, decision-making processes. So it's not an academic point of view, of course, it's my personal point of view, but I think that it brings something different in organizations in general to have more women on board, and I'm totally convinced that having different kinds of problem-solving habits and ways to deal with a problem and solve the problem is something that brings more efficiency into the organization, so governments or not governments.
Any more questions? Yes, we have another one up, and the person in a pink top.
Good morning. My name is Hugh Carnegy. I'm Chinese. I'm an entrepreneur in France. I heard so much, bad about why we should not be an entrepreneur in France. I'm sure you have a few reasons why we should come to France to open a company.
Well, did you set up this question?
No.
No, it's a very good question. It's a very good question, and it'd probably be our last one. Unless put your hand up now if you want another question, because we only have a couple of minutes. Okay, we'll take this as the last question.
It's funny because I'm in charge of SMEs, innovation, and the digital economy. But the Prime Minister asked me to work also on the attractiveness of France for investors and for entrepreneurs. And I think, it's true that when you read the press, sometimes you think, well, France is really not the place to create your business. But at the same time, I meet with business leaders or entrepreneurs every day, and many of them are very happy to do business in France. And if you look at the recent positions of Xavier Niel, who created Iliad and who said, well, France is actually a good place if you want to create your business. And if you listen to this study that has been made by Ernst & Young, I think maybe 1 month ago, saying that in France it's very easy actually, as opposed to what many people say, it's very easy from an administrative point of view to create your business. It can be done in 7 steps only, so it's quite easy. And also what many foreign entrepreneurs and investors tell me, in France you have a great, and I'm speaking a bit for myself, but you have a great digital scene actually, lots of techs, because we have very good engineers, we have very good engineering schools, we have very, very good creative schools. And I was talking the other day with a guy who is the European head for a big venture capital fund, American capital fund. And he was telling me, and I was very happy, very pleased to hear that when he's looking for a good investment in a great tech startup, he looks in France because that's where he finds the best return on investment, and that's where he finds the best diversity in technologies. Because we have that dynamic tech scene in France, and nobody ever talks about that, but it's true. So I think also what we need to put forward is infrastructures, good students, entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial spirit, even though maybe people are not aware about that, and quite easy administrative processes to create your business. And what maybe we need to do more, and I say we society and we government, is to create more role models and promote more or communicate a bit more about success stories that we have in France and which are great, and do more storytelling about what is going well in France, and not only complain or focus on what's going bad. So I think that's a point. And when you look at the conditions that you can find in France with good R&D tax credits, with many instruments to promote innovation that already exist or that we are putting in place right now, you have many incentives if you're a small innovative company or an innovative entrepreneur to create your business in France, actually. And I'm sure the future will prove me right.
Okay, thank you very much. That brings this session to a close. Thank you very much indeed, Fleur Pellerin.